Hi, this is Mark Hopkins. Welcome back to another episode of Unsung. Today, our guest is Richard von Voorhis. I've known for a while with great gaps in the middle. He's in the military, has had a few jobs. He's still young, decided to travel and wanted to discover the world from a different point of view. He's been doing that for some time. I've watched his adventures on Facebook. I've always been interested in, because it's not like he doesn't put out the normal pictures that you see from people that are sitting holding a craft beer in a restaurant or something. You look at his pictures and you wonder, what the heck is he doing? And I got to be honest, half the times I see you doing stuff, I go, that's unsafe. And I'd be the last person normally to say that, but I'm like, that doesn't look safe. Yeah, I mean, you're doing stuff, and I'm looking at the way the ropes are hooked up and stuff like that. But hey, you're out there doing something. Thank you for coming on.
You're very welcome. Thank you for inviting me, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, right now you're in the middle of the desert in your truck, right?
Yes, I'm about 10 miles outside of a little town called Winnemucca in north central Nevada.
You're always nowhere, You're like in the middle of nowhere.
That's the easiest place to live in your vehicle and live like this, and gives you a lot of room to be free.
And what made you were in the military for 8 years?
I joined in 2010, and I was in the Air Force active duty for 8 years. And I left active duty and transitioned to the reserve about 2 years ago. And I've been in the reserve for 2 years now, and I've really enjoyed it.
And you've been doing the reserve thing, but that's really just something that, so you keep a connection, because you're mostly just on the road.
Yeah, it's kind of a placeholder. I mean, I love my coworkers, and my job is still very serious, but it's not a full-time job. I did my first 8 years of active, I was an aircraft mechanic, and I was first stationed in Dover, Delaware for 5 years, then had to get out of there, so I volunteered worldwide, wherever they want to send me, however long, and they sent me to Turkey for a year and a half, which would have been great if we could have left the base, but ISIS was getting pretty rowdy back then, and it wasn't really safe to do so. So for a year and a half, I was stuck on that base, which actually is kind of like a minimum security prison. Was not a place I really enjoyed being, but I did make the best of it, and kind of funny what skills you develop and what you can focus on when you're forced to stay in confines for a long time like that. And it's probably what a lot of people are discovering right now with this virus epidemic or pandemic, the things that they're having a chance to focus on that they wouldn't normally pay attention to.
Well, I think you learned an important lesson in that that takes far too long for people to learn, and many people never learn, is that people need to learn to be alone with themselves.
Yeah, you learn a lot about yourself, with solitude. I mean, it definitely gets lonely, but you figure things out, and you focus on things, and you have time to digest information and experiences that you might never really look back on or pay attention to when you're in the company of others.
And the reason I reached out to you now was, one thing was that what's going on in the world reminded me of your situation, but the other thing was that in my glimpses into your postings, I kind of got the sense now was the time, because you were going from this real wide circle to this tighter circle, and you seem to want to get back to appreciating people in a different way. You were ready, or some version.
You're talking about 2 years ago when I hit the road, or recently?
Well, 2 years ago versus now, where you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely have a lot fewer people around me. I'm usually alone, but the people that I have around me now are the people that I really want around me, are the good folks, you know, close friends, and now I have a lot of control over who I'm around now, because I can go really, you know, within reason anywhere I want and hang out with whoever I want, and so that pretty much guarantees that whoever I'm coexisting with, I like being around.
How do you fund your adventures?
So before I left active duty, I kind of, when I left Turkey, I came to California, and I had a year left on my enlistment. And I kind of decided, if I didn't fall in love with the Air Force again, because Turkey was a bit of a tough time for me, being locked down on that base for a year and a half, kind of made me reconsider my priorities and figure out what I wanted to do. And during that time, I kind of decided that if I didn't fall in love with California and my new position, being out west, then I would leave the military, or at least active duty, sell my stuff, and start traveling and figure out where I belong. And I've always been fairly good with money, but in the last 2 years, 3 years, I really focused on saving up, and being a single guy with no kids. It's pretty easy, and very few expensive hobbies besides fixing a car that I continually like to abuse off road. I was able to save up enough to, if I budgeted properly, to live for 5 years off my savings with the new life that I had planned, which is living out of my truck. So not a very extravagant life, but 5 years is I figured would be more than enough time for me to find my place and settle in. And I fully intend to settle down and have a family, and you know, but just not right now. And that money has allowed me the freedom to better decide, you know, make more educated choices. But right now, for the first year of traveling, I lived off my savings, and I was spending about $1,700 a month, roughly. I forget what that works out to a year, but like $20,000 a year, somewhere around there. But I've in the last 5 months or so, I've really been fortunate to just kind of wander into jobs and people that have asked me to work for them, and whether it be doing auto work, or working on farms, or renovating houses, or all sorts of jobs like that. I've met a lot of people, and I guess made a good impression, and people have asked me to work for them. So right now I'm no longer living off savings. I'm living off working about 1 week each month, and that's enough to fund the other 4 weeks. Now,
when you're saying you're meeting new people, what have you seen from your unique perspective, going around the country and meeting people and everything? What have been your observations on people? What do you think that other people just don't see the same, because they're getting everything filtered through screens and they're not actually experiencing it?
To answer that, I kind of have to start a few years ago, back in 2015, I believe it was. My close buddy Chris and I, we were living together. The three of us buddies were living all under one roof, and I had a conversation at work with some guys, and I forget how the topic came up, but the question was whether hitchhiking would still be possible in the United States in this day and age. And everyone seemed to think that it would be impossible, that people wouldn't pick you up, that you would be arrested, or just no one would feel safe doing that. And I kind of thought they were wrong. And so I started talking to my buddy back when I came home that day from work, and we decided to try it. And we set our sights on Virginia Beach. Is about a 5-hour drive south from Delaware, and we ended up catching 10 rides with about 15 different people, and rode all the way down to Virginia Beach and back over a 4-day weekend. And it was really inspiring, the people that we were successful, that people picked us up, that we weren't waiting hours out, on the side of the road, that it happened quickly. And it was fun to talk to each one of those people that picked us up and ask why they did that. And then get their life story, kind of a little snippet. Sometimes they were only 10, 20-minute rides, other times they were a couple hours. But it was fascinating to me to learn, to get a window into their lives. And I discovered that putting your thumb out on the side of a highway asking for a ride is a filter that only stops interesting people. I mean, I suppose there might be some bad folks out there. Hope, God forbid, that happens, but I haven't experienced it. But everyone that's picked us up was always had a fascinating story, and was very good natured, and it gave me a lot of faith in the people around me. And then we proceeded to do that. I did that with another buddy, another 400 miles from Tennessee down to Panama City Beach. And then we went all over the East Coast. And I've gone a little bit through Europe hitchhiking, and Oman and Thailand. And everywhere I've just met really friendly, awesome people. And really none of the types of people that the naysayers told me that I would meet. Dangerous people wanting to do me harm or anything like that. So it really changed my outlook and expectations of other people. Made me a lot more willing to be interactive with them. And then I started picking up hitchhikers myself. And I've had some awesome interactions doing that. One time I picked one up in Indiana. His name was Jimmy. And I had him drive my car almost the entire way to Vegas while I slept in the passenger seat. I mean, we talked, but that was the trust level. After a couple hours of driving, I said, "Hey, do you mind driving?" So he drove, and we kept talking, hanging out, and it was like a 2,000-mile drive. And this last summer, I picked up another one in, I forget, some Midwestern state, and we drove all the way to Colorado. And man, I've done that a lot, and nothing bad has ever happened, and I've just met awesome people, and that was the turning point in my outlook and my willingness to interact with people, and me realizing how much it can benefit me, basically. How fun it is to get to know them, and now I'm writing about it, so it gives me writing material, and but that was kind of that faith in humanity was what gave me faith to do this new lifestyle, because although it may look like a very independent lifestyle, you do end up relying on people, people you meet on the road. That's what makes it worthwhile, is meeting interesting people and generous people and kind-hearted people.
Well, people don't realize that a lot of times we are interconnected and dependent on strangers.
Very much so.
Realize that. till they get out there. And it sounds like what you've done has been like a tremendous leap of faith, and an experiment in trust,
Yeah, it's been kind of little steps, but that first one, the hitchhiking thing, that was absolutely the turning point. And it's what kind of made me realize that a lot of people are very misled about the people around them and what to expect and the dangers. That everyone thinks that everything is super, super dangerous, and it may be, but I guess you kind of develop a good sense of that, and you keep your head on a swivel, and you watch your back, and if you got those two things covered, then have fun. Always be safe, but there's a lot of things that you'll miss out on if you're overly cautious.
Have you ever had somebody you wouldn't pick up, or you passed on, or a ride you passed on just because you had a feeling or something?
I always, being a mechanic, I'm an aircraft mechanic, but I prefer to work on cars. I love working on cars, so I always stop and help people when I see they're broken down, either out of gas, need a jump start, flat tire, or way more serious stuff. But the only time I actually had to peel out and leave somebody in the dust was there's this crazy guy. I was driving to my sister's place out in Boston, and it was about 10 o'clock at night, and I saw this car driving slow in the right lane, and it had a left front tire was flat, and I tapped my horn. I pulled up next to him and rolled the window down while we're cruising at like 40 or 50, and I tried to signal, hey, I'll help you change your tire. I'll pull over, and he kept on going, and I just kind of slinked back and watched the whole thing unfold, and his tire began to peel off the rim, and it started slapping around, and it began to rip off his fender and his side view mirror, and then it was down to the rim, and the rim is gouging into the asphalt, and chunks of aluminum are flying off, and he finally pulled over, and I should have known at this time not to go near the guy, but I pulled over with him, and I was about 100 feet ahead of him, and I just put it in park, and I waited, and I think I rolled down the window and yelled to him, whatever, and he jumped out of his car and just started running straight at me, like arms flailing around, looking like a crazy person, and I just threw it in drive and peeled out. That's the only time anyone's ever like sketched me out, or I was worried for my safety.
Well, I mean, that's good. It only happened once. I would just worry. I mean, I'm not a worrywart about extreme things. I get worried about stupid things like that. I've had so many situations where I've tried to help people and gotten hidden in the back of the head by the person who I was helping protect the other person from, or you get in the middle of something and you realize it's way sketchier than you thought. So I'm kind of like you said, head on a swivel. I kind of go into it in that, how's the situation end? Does it end on the Discovery Channel? Are there milk carton pictures involved? So I mean, like I said, looking at your pictures, I look at your stuff and I look at some of the stuff and I'm going, don't do that. That's not set up properly. You're not. And I realize, you know what? He's not. He'll be fine. He'll be fine. Be fine.
Yeah, it's I guess I've become a little bit more cautious with the picking up hitchhikers, not because of any one incident, but just because I've become a little bit smarter, and I realized that there is risk, or even helping people on the side of the road. Now I kind of have a set of rules. I'm very careful. I usually don't do it if it's dark, and if there's multiple people there, I'll stay in my car. I'll roll the window down. I'll kind of talk to them through the window, and just get a sense of where they're at and whether they seem like their backstory is true and whether they seem calm and at ease. And if they don't give me that good, warm and fuzzy feeling, then I'm not going to help them out.
Well, see, the problem
I haven't had that.
I don't have as much concern for helping people, as bad as it sounds, because everybody's got a cell phone now. You know, it's not like in the old days where you were just flat out stranded somewhere. You know, I'll usually pull up and say, "Cell phone? You got a cell phone?" Yeah, and I'm good or whatever. You know, if you see somebody doesn't have a cell phone, it's a different thing. So you know, they have the same access. They're not stranded per se. And usually when I get to somebody, they say, "No, somebody's on the way. AAA is on the way. Whatever's on the way, or whatever." You know,
yeah.
and you want to help people, but you also don't. You know, you don't want to do something that jacks up your life for a couple months because of a choice to help somebody. You know.
No, definitely. And like I said, it's kind of I have a lot of confidence in my ability to judge the safety of a situation, and I suppose that'll last until, you know, something bad happens. Hopefully it doesn't, but I just have a lot of confidence in my ability to evaluate people and tell whether they're telling me the truth or whether they're, you know, trying to, you know, hurt me or something like that.
Right.
And nowadays, like I said, I'll just roll down the window, crack it, and talk to them for a minute or two before I get out of the vehicle. And if things feel good, then I go with it. If they don't, then I don't.
See, I know what would happen with me. Like, I remember from trips with my buddies, and my one buddy he was open to anything, and slight exaggeration, but you'd fall asleep in the backseat of his car, and you'd wake up, and he's on the passenger side now, and there's like a naked person driving the car. And you're like, pull over. What happened? Pull over. Right now. You know,
that would be startling. Yeah.
And so when I let him drive, you know, he wasn't naked. And like, that's a little better, but how did a person undress? Where did he come from? Why is he here? How did he undress while you were sleeping next to him? Like, come on. This is an ad for your bad judgment. You know, I'm scarred. But
I can understand that.
Do you think that what you did, when you have little Von Voorhis, will you want them to do this if they have the opportunity?
Do what?
Your journey. Just go out there for a couple
to travel.
Yeah.
I mean, this is something that's not everybody can do, because it totally requires a lack of a prior commitment. You know, this doesn't work. It doesn't work very well if you're in a relationship unless you got a significant other that's really down for it, which is kind of hard to find. Usually doesn't work if you have kids. Doesn't, you know, if you're a homeowner, have debt and stuff like that. There's a lot of things that preclude you from doing a lifestyle like this. But if you have the financial means to do so, and you're curious and you're not totally satisfied with your current position in life, then absolutely, yeah. I mean, I'm confident that when I settle down, it will be because I've found my calling. I know that because that's the only reason why I would settle down. If there's someone out there that's questioning that, then it just, to me, it just makes sense to take some time off and figure things out.
But I mean, if somebody if they straight up have the money, though, if they straight up have the money to do it in the comfort level, that's kind of different. I mean, what you're doing is not like some, you know, rich kid's trip. You know, you kind of got it together, decided what you wanted to do that worked for you to be a better human being, for you. and you budgeted and did everything to save it. This was your investment into your future.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a different thing. If somebody just doesn't has that complete comfort level, I was telling somebody the other day, I saw one of your pictures where, you had, and I'm probably messing this up a little bit, but you had basically modified your truck to use it to supply hot water for a washing machine.
Yeah. So that
to wash clothes.
So before I hit the road, just in case any of your listeners are curious what I'm actually living out of, it's a 2002 4Runner. 4-wheel drive V6, and I have a TTR 225 dirt bike that's been converted to street legal, and that lives on the back of the truck. I have this hydraulic lift that lifts it up real high, so I have really good ground clearance. And I have a fridge in here, a full-size mattress, all the tools I can need, recovery gear, and the last piece of the puzzle. I did all this so that when I hit the road, I would be, whenever I decided to stop traveling, it would be because I had found where I belonged, not because I couldn't stand living in a little truck any longer. So I wanted to make sure that I covered all the bases that would allow me to live comfortably, or, comfortable within reason. And that included, being able to prepare food, store food, and being able to shower and do laundry and all that stuff. Everything you do in a normal house. So I did a little research into that, and I found a way to use a heat exchanger, which is mounted in line with my engine's cooling system that uses the hot engine coolant, which is about 190 degrees, 188 degrees, to heat up fresh water that I pump in. And it doesn't mix the two fluids. It just uses the engine's heat to warm incoming fresh water through this little tiny thing called a heat exchanger, and it's these metal plates that are brazed together that allow thermal energy transfer. And I have an electric pump that supplies the water in a 7-gallon tank. And what I'll do is I'll recirculate that until the water's about 110 degrees and shut the truck off, and I can take a nice hot shower. Take maybe 2 showers with 7 gallons if I'm out in the desert. Or I can do a full load of laundry. And the laundry was the final piece, because it really was a pain to have to go into town, for a couple hours, usually in a, not so great part of town at some laundromat.
Well,
sit there.
It's ironic that you want to get away from people and be alone and be out there. And then you had this one kink in your plan where when you do have to go and you have to go into a laundromat where you're just meeting people that are wearing the last clean clothes they own on earth,
I suppose with the right mindset, I could turn that into a place where I would meet people, but somehow by the time I get there, I'm usually may not have the energy for that, and it's usually a little bit of a shady part of town that I'll go to. So that was just, it was a drag to have to do that and have to go into town every week or so. So I started doing laundry with the hot water. And the hot shower thing was a really big, that's my little slice of home. Basically, I can go, if I can find a body of water, a lake or whatever, stream, I'll take an hour-long shower if I want to, Just sit there, the truck idles. While it idles, it burns about 0.3 gallons an hour. So, I mean, at today's gas prices, that's like 40 cents for an hour-long shower. But, me having an equipped vehicle is really an important thing, to be able to do it efficiently and to be able to stay happy, to keep your spirits up. It's really important to prepare, your vehicle or whatever you're going to be living out of, so that you don't grow tired of the lifestyle or grow to hate it,
Well, I know you were worried about time, but we're almost out of time. It's almost time when we do the pause and go to the after show. But I would ask you, the final question for this thing is, what would you say to somebody who's listening, who's you 2 years ago or whatever, who's thinking about doing this? What would you say to somebody?
I would say make sure you have your life in order. get your finances straight, plan as much as you can, but realize that not everything has to be planned. And oftentimes you can figure it out along the way. Just have the important bases covered and let the story write itself.
Let the story write itself. There you go. There you go. That's good advice. Okay, well, talking to Rich von Voorhis, and we're going to do a little bit of after show. Talking to Rich von Voorhis about his journey across the country and the people he's met and the things he's learned. This is the after show portion, and I just want to ask you a couple things. You said you breezed over a little statement there when you talked about the mounting your motorcycle, and I bet you there's a whole chapter in that where you said you put a hydraulic lift on it to raise it up so that you had clearance. Mm-hmm. I bet you could write a chapter of your book about clearance, and because I see, like, I get the feeling from your pictures, if your trailer could speak, it would have its own story to tell.
Yeah. The trailer I hauled for the first, about the first year that I was on the road, I hauled that intermittently, and I did so mostly not for the extra storage really, but because I had welded this motorcycle rack on the tongue of the trailer, and prior to that, I had like a standard motorcycle rack in the hitch of my truck when I would haul the bike without the trailer, and that rack stuck out really far and hung really low, and I couldn't off-road. It would drag the bike, and that was obviously really not a good thing. You can quickly destroy it, quickly get stuck, damage the bike, damage the rack. So when I would haul the bike on the trailer, I had this 3-axis articulating hitch that doesn't bind in any direction. It's not like a ball coupler. So you could do some crazy off-roading with this trailer and get these crazy differential angles between the vehicle and the trailer. And that helps. I could actually off-road better pulling the trailer versus just the Forerunner and the motorcycle in the back in the standard rack because of the ground clearance. But I stumbled upon this motorcycle rack that has a small bottle jack built into it, and you pump it up, and it has this parallel linkage that lifts the bike about 2.5 feet up in the air. And that, coupled with the fact that I flipped my hitch receiver upside down so that it lifts the square receiver about 8 inches up higher, the bike is super high. It's super high up, and it's you can do some pretty gnarly rock crawling without concern for the bike dragging. And sometimes I'll even go to the extra effort of attaching a cargo strap around the hub of the motorcycle wheels and ratcheting them up to the handlebars and the tail frame to compress the suspension to lift the wheels even further, to further increase the ground clearance. Because sometimes I'll look back and I'll be in like a boulder, like a rock garden, and I'll see the wheels rolling against the rocks. I was like, I should probably lift the bike up a little more. But yeah, that is kind of. Say again.
You've had to learn all kinds of shortcuts and rules of thumb to get through things.
Yeah. It's just a slow process. The vehicle has never done. I've been slowly making it better, and I recently added full skid plates for the radiator, engine, transmission, transfer case, and gas tank. So the whole bottom of the truck is paved with 3/16 steel. And that allows me to kind of slide over some things. But if you compare this to a lot of other, off-road built trucks, you'll notice I don't have huge tires and I don't have a ton of suspension lift.
But people that really do off-road stuff don't do all that glamour, glitzy stuff to their trucks. They have trucks that are slightly modified, and there's more you can't see than what you can see.
Exactly, and that's kind of the definition of overlanding, which is traveling long distances with long periods of time in between resupply in a vehicle, versus, rock crawling is a whole other animal where the vehicle is not really built for high speeds or highway or long distance travel, but it's built for articulation and sliding over things and not destroying it. And that's a rock crawler. But this is a very middle of the road build. It's not. I mean, I'll do some mild rock crawling. I'll take the tires down to 8 or 9 psi sometimes, and just kind of bounce through the rocks. But this vehicle is a multi-purpose vehicle. It's a vehicle that I've put around 50,000 miles in the last year and a half around the country, and I've gotten 17, 18 miles per gallon on the highway. Sometimes considerably better if I take it easy. But it can also do some pretty gnarly off-roading. And to find that happy medium is pretty difficult in a vehicle and a setup, especially when you have a dirt bike on the back.
Have you ever seen the videos of, there's a guy who does, I guess it's some hybrid between rock crawling and overlanding in a Crown Vic, and he doesn't, somebody else filmed him. He's never filmed himself. He didn't film himself, somebody else filmed.
He did Lion's Back in Moab.
Now, do you think he's crazy?
Well, a Crown Vic has the Interceptor version has a limited slip differential in the rear and a Ford 8.8. It's a decently strong platform. It obviously has not the greatest ground clearance, but it's got good traction. As long as you watch yourself and wheel placement as far as sharp rocks and getting high centered, then it's, I'll basically do the trail, watch the rocks, turn back when you feel sketched out. But I didn't see any videos of
97 Crown Vic.
Yeah, no, I mean, one of the most enjoyable off-road experiences that I've ever had was in my front-wheel drive RAV4 in the mountains of, I think we were in New Hampshire, or maybe Massachusetts. No, it was New Hampshire, with my sister. And basically, the way I see it, the fun starts when you begin to push the limits of whatever you're driving. If it's a rock crawler, it's pretty hard to push the limits, but you can. If it's a two-wheel drive RAV4 with bald tires, then it's pretty easy to push the limits, and that's exactly what we're doing. We're on this
muddy... The way you look at him, the way you look at that guy in the Crown, the way you look at the guy in the Crown Vic may be the way people look at you. Whatever that way is.
Yes, most definitely. In those experiences where I don't know if you'll recall it, but there's one picture of my truck literally in like a boulder field and just looks completely ridiculous and out of place. And the fact is, it took me like 2 hours to go a quarter mile because I had to drive so carefully and grind over rocks and I dented on my gas tank and all that stuff. That's why I have a gas tank skip plate now. But it's basically like that's fun for me when you begin to push the limits of whatever you're driving, and you have to begin to use you have to really think sensibly about where to put your tires and how to not destroy your vehicle and whether this is all worth it. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes you have to turn back. But that's when the fun
is. It's a metaphor for life.
Huh?
It's a metaphor for life,
You could say that.
It's when to turn back and what to do, what not to do, and thinking out your steps, just like you've come to do with your profiling of hitchhikers as you've gotten older, or been doing it longer.
Yeah.
The skid plates didn't come out of nowhere. Every lesson comes out of, everything comes out of a lesson learned. It came out of the gas tank. And I remember seeing you in the boulder field because I remember every time I see a picture, I think, he's going to get stuck. And I kept thinking, he's going to get stuck. He's going in too far.
I do sometimes. And that's okay. Cause honestly, man, the times that I've been stuck, especially when it's with buddies, but even when it's solo, man, those have been the cool moments. When I look back and really try to think of an enjoyable time of my life, it's been when I'm brainstorming how to get myself out of the pickle that I just got myself into. And whether how to rig up different recovery gear, and I know you're very much familiar with rigging and rope rescue and stuff like that, and it's very similar for a vehicle, and winching and snatch blocks and vector forces and all that stuff, and trying to figure out exactly what's holding up the vehicle, how to minimize the amount of drag on the underside of the vehicle, whether lifting it is the proper way, whether creating ramps, displacing the snow or mud or whatever's holding you up. It's just a big problem that you have to solve, and I love that.
Right.
That's my bread and butter, man.
What are the main tools that you can't live without, or the main things you can't live without?
For vehicle extrication, I would say the high lift jack. I don't know if have you used them?
Yep.
Okay.
It's one of the most versatile tools there is.
You probably have experience with the rescue, the first responder jack, the yellow and red one. I don't know if you guys use them in Gypsar.
Yeah, we have a version of it. We have a version of it.
Okay.
But yeah, they're great. They can do anything, whether you're popping a lock, or getting something unstuck.
Yeah, if you need to push with 7,000 pounds of force in any direction, whether compressive or tensional or lifting, whatever it is, that's the tool for the job. And I welded up this attachment. I took a couple pieces of steel and welded them together, and it fits over the nose of the high lift jack, and it creates a flat surface to go up against my tire. And then I have these slits cut in the side of it, and I'll put a chain through my wheel, and the chain will lock into wherever you feel like along the chain's length into these slits. So you can make a tight-fitting attachment device directly to the vehicle's suspension. And when you're trying to extricate a vehicle and you lift up the vehicle from the frame, you have to wait until the suspension droops away from the vehicle, and you end up having to lift the vehicle very high, and it gets precarious. But if you lift directly from the suspension, from the axle or the tire, then you don't have to decompress the suspension. You immediately lift. You immediately have that tire out of the hole. You can fill that hole in with snow or dirt or wood or whatever you want. Deflate the tire and then let it back down so you have more traction, and boom, you're out. I'll do that if I'm stuck in snow and I'm by myself or I don't have a place to winch easily. I'll just go around to each of the four wheels with a high lift jack, lift it up, fill it in with snow, deflate the tire down to sometimes as low as 7 psi, and then put the high lift jack away and drive out of it. And that high lift jack has got me out of so many bad decisions. Man, it's been very helpful.
What's the longest you've ever been stuck? What's the longest you've ever been stuck?
One night I was in very new to off-roading. I had this 93 Jeep Cherokee, and I decided to drive across one of the small waterways down in the Delaware Bay during low tide. The worst move you can make, driving in a tidal zone during low tide. Inevitably, I got stuck in the very slick mud that was on the bottom of the bay there, and water started coming in the floor, and it was only a couple inches of water, and the tide was going out, but I knew that soon the tide would be coming back in, and the vehicle would be totally underwater. It was like a 4-foot tide there, and that I was already 2 feet deep in water. Over the next about 7 hours, let me see, two other vehicles got stuck trying to pull me out, and then finally my buddy showed up with a winch, and he was able to winch out all of us, and he saved the day. And then I learned the importance of not making stupid decisions like that, first of all, but of coming prepared and having a winch and recovery gear and the knowledge of how to use them properly. And that's the thing, like so many people walk around, carry around a ton of tools, but how to use them effectively is a whole other story. That's what I've slowly developed through making lots of bad decisions and having to figure it out, is how to use all those tools to my advantage there.
We were stuck
for, sorry. Continue.
No, as you get going, you can have a lot of stuff, but as you get more experience with it, even though you may have the stuff, you could do more with less. Is what you learn.
Exactly.
You know.
Yeah. Basically, I've my setup in my little Forerunner has been optimized for versatility, but not doing anything quickly. Most of the things, I have this vehicle. I have about 1,300 pounds of stuff in here. The vehicle is over the gross vehicle weight rating by about 200 pounds when I roll. But it's empty. It's about 4,000 pounds. I'm usually around 5,400. And that's most of besides the bike's about 300 pounds. So that's, and minus me, it's about 1,000 pounds of specialized gear, stuff that I've discovered that I absolutely need. And it's usually buried very deeply in the vehicle and takes a while to get out, but so it's not really quickly accessible, a lot of it, because that's not really a necessity most of the time. What's a necessity is having it and knowing how to use it. So when I get stuck, it's usually not a time critical thing. I'll take my time, I'll devise a plan, figure out, go through the motions, figure out a couple different ways to do it, and then start, winching or lifting or whatever, and yeah, usually sometimes it'll take a couple hours, but I haven't had to call for any assistance in the last few years, so that's good.
Has technology been good to you in your travels? I don't know if one of the things I always thought was good was that you weren't one of those guys that strapped a GoPro on, and took a lot of video of nothing, and just kept putting up video. And I thought, that's why it was odd when you started putting up more again. I felt like that was a sign of a change, and do you we're talking on your cell phone, so you have that, so that's a connection to the real world, and it's a safety thing at this point too. But do you watch movies on Netflix, or do you just keep away from all that? You don't get wrapped up in any of these shows that people get distracted by, or are you just paying attention to what's out there with you?
Covered a couple things in that question. First, I'll talk about safety and connection to the outside world. I have a Garmin InReach texting device, satellite texting device that I can. I don't have it activated right now because I'm within an area. I will be for a while within an area that has signal. But anytime I go out into the boonies or I know I'm going to be out there for a while, I'll activate my Garmin InReach. It's like, I forget how much I pay a month, but that allows me to do several things. I can text anybody, and I can send an SOS if I'm to search and rescue personnel if I'm in a bad situation, and I can also pull weather reports, which is really important sometimes in the mountains, snow and extreme cold weather. In addition to that, I have a dedicated SOS device, the ACR PLB, personal locator beacon. I know you know what that means. Your listeners might not, but that thing just pings straight to the satellites, and that's just a strictly emergency thing. And then I have obviously my cell phone. But a lot of the places that I'm at don't have cell service. Obviously, that's kind of the whole idea of it. But I have those things as backups because, well, it's primarily, I would say, because of my military obligation. I can't be out of contact for days at a time in the military. I'm still on call. I'm still in the reserve. And I need to be reachable. So that's the big thing. But also, my family, my dad, his health is declining a little bit, and I want to be on call for him and my sister and anybody else that cares about me. That and also, last but not least, I like to be able to phone a friend or ask for help if something bad does happen. It's not just to keep everyone who's worrying happy. It's, to save me in case I need it.
Right.
I forget what you asked.
Think about that.
Yeah. I forget what you asked next after that.
No, it's you covered it. It's just a lot of people don't think about that when they go out. They just go out with their cell phone and count on that one piece of magic and forget themselves in the situations. And especially if you have no plan, things can go south really fast.
Yeah. I mean, there's the two extremes. There's going out without thinking about relying on others, which is kind of the mindset that you should have. But you should also, at the same time, be able to rely on others. It's kind of a catch-22 there, but you have to convince yourself that no one's going to come when you call for help, so you have to be prepared. But then you also have to provide yourself an effective way to call for help.
Right. And and your family, are they still back in this area?
Yeah, my dad, my sister lives up in Boston, and my dad about a little over a year ago moved to be close to her in Boston as well. He's in a dementia unit right now. Unfortunately, he's got dementia, and he's still pretty clear, but it is slowly getting worse. And he can't live on his own right now. But at least he's close to my sister, and I visited him a few months ago. And that's all I got. I got my dad and my sister. That's my mom passed away when I was 6, so it's been my dad and my sister for the last 23 years. So.
Okay. Well, at least they're near each other, and gives you one area to focus on. I think it's a great thing you're doing, and it's it's a little bit of a brave choice, and I know a lot of people that could benefit from something like that, but I don't think a lot of people are comfortable with being with themselves, and I think they need so many distractions. And I think now with what's going on in the world right now, we're seeing a lot of people that are forced to stay in a confined area, their house, whether it be an apartment or a McMansion or whatever, with their families, and people aren't faring as well as they thought they would.
Yeah.
Because they're not.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I'm not as quite. It may seem pretty solitary out here, but I really, I'm very fortunate to meet a lot of people on the road. Sometimes I spend some time with them. So I use social media, Instagram and Facebook, and I just post what I'm doing and where I'm going now and then. And man, people are very friendly. They'll message me on Instagram and either give me advice on where to go, or they'll, especially dirt bikers, they'll be like, "Hey, want to go ride?" And suddenly I'm riding with a bunch of dirt bikers in some random state, and a bunch of people that I've never met. So you end up meeting a lot of people on the road. Right now, I'm actually with my buddy Brent. I'm staying at his. He bought this little house, and I'm helping him fix it up out in the desert. But I met him on Instagram as well. So you really have this network of people online that are willing to be your friend and make your travels a lot better. And that's what I found the last 2 years. So much of it has been from people that have hit me up online and offer to meet or take me on their plane or take me in their paraglider or all sorts of crazy things. But yeah.
Where do you want to settle in the country when you settle down? What area do you like?
Definitely still figuring that out, but I've been to 48 states, I believe. I haven't hit North Dakota or Alaska. But out of those 48, Idaho and Utah are really high up on the list.
Okay.
Just exquisite places that I've, for whatever reason, felt extremely happy when I was there. Just felt very free, and just couldn't take a smile off my face while I've been there. Out in the lava fields or the canyonlands or the desert or it's just they're fantastic places to explore and maybe someday live.
I think it's great what you're doing. I mean, the other side of this is you're probably going to hit some magic age, and there's going to be, you'll get to a point where somebody is, be saying, doesn't he ever get out of that chair? He never does anything, where you get to a point where you're just, it'll happen, and you'll just smile at them, and that's what happens. You develop a secret life. I thought my grandmother just sat by the window and sipped lemonade all her life, and then after she passed away, I found all this stuff. It's like, Grandma got around. She was all over the place. She was sitting there because she was resting. But it's good. Do you still keep in touch with anybody from out here?
Oh, most definitely. I kind of wished I had mentioned it in the first segment, because Rich had mentioned it in the video that you sent me, or the audio, about Civil Air Patrol, my experience there, and how, man, that turned me around. That was an essential ingredient in this whole in my life working out, man. The Civil Air Patrol and Hawk Mountain Ranger School and all the experiences there. It gave me leadership, it gave me responsibility, which helped me develop maturity and leadership, and it made me take things seriously, and it improved my behavior at school. It just allowed me to do a 180, and about halfway through high school when I joined, Civil Air Patrol in a lot of ways saved me.
It does have a lot of people. A lot of people, when they choose to take that first leap in volunteering and learning something and getting into something like that, it does change people. I see. That's why I would always when Jim would bring a group by, that's why we'd always do the different things with the different groups, and you were in one of those groups. Over the years, and
I still keep in contact with Jim and Mike Hathaway and a bunch of other cadets from Civil Air Patrol. And man, the friends I made there and the experiences and the knowledge I developed was I wouldn't trade that for the world, man.
I saw Jim last week.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, saw him last week. Bumped into him in the store. And he's still perfectly Jim and going fine. But yeah, see, you were worried about talking. I don't think you had a single problem. You were worried about cursing like a sailor. You didn't curse once.
I didn't. I'm proud of myself.
Yeah, you did great. Nobody would know there was any problem. You were worried about nothing. It was all fine. If I guess we'll wrap it up, and thank you for coming. And if you ever want to come back on and talk about some of your adventures when you're not off guard, that'll be great too. You're always welcome.
I may take you up on that. This is fun.